I should have slept on the floor. That's what I told myself the first time she moved closer, close enough for me to feel the cold rain still clinging to the sleeve of her sweater, close enough for me to hear the breath she was trying very hard to keep steady. But when lightning cracked across the hotel window and lit up her face for half a second, I saw something that made my chest go tight. She wasn't just scared of the storm. She'd been crying. And the woman I was almost sure hated me was lying in the dark beside me, pretending not to tremble, while the whole building shook with thunder. That was the moment I knew the night was about to change everything. 3 months earlier, if you'd told me I'd end up sharing a bed with Sloane Avery in a storm-locked hotel 2 states away, I would have laughed in your face. Not because she wasn't beautiful. That part was obvious from the first moment I saw her standing in my apartment building elevator, with a cardboard box in her arms and rainwater dripping from the ends of her hair onto the cracked tile floor. No, I would have laughed because Sloane had one of those faces that made you immediately check whether your shirt was wrinkled. But her expression made it equally clear she didn't want help, conversation, or any form of human error within a 5-foot radius. I was carrying groceries. She was holding a box labeled books in black marker that was definitely too heavy for the way her wrist bent under it. "Need a hand?" I asked. She looked up at me, then at the box, then back at me like she was deciding whether I was being kind or intrusive. "I've got it," she said. The elevator jolted once before the doors closed. Her box slipped. Instinct took over. I caught the bottom of it before half her books hit the floor. For 1 second, our hands touched against damp cardboard. She stilled. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. "Thanks," she said, quieter that time. "You're welcome. Neighbor, I guess." That almost made her smile. Almost. Then the elevator opened on the 8th floor, and she walked out without another word. Monday morning, I walked into the conference room at work and saw her again. Same guarded eyes, same impossible composure, different setting. "This is Sloane Avery," my boss said. "She transferred from our Boston office. She'll be overseeing the Halston redevelopment pitch with Noah." I'm pretty sure my soul left my body for a second. She looked at me across the table, and if she was surprised, she hid it better than anyone I'd ever met. "Neighbor," I muttered before I could stop myself. That almost smile showed up again, then vanished. Coworker. That was how it started. Not with sparks, not with destiny, with a cardboard box, an elevator, and the immediate understanding that the woman who now lived across the hall from me would also be sitting across from me every day at work. At first, I told myself she was just reserved. Then I told myself she was professional. Then I started noticing the way she went careful around me. Not cold exactly, not rude, just careful, too careful. If I made a joke in a meeting, everyone else might laugh, but Sloane would glance at me like she was measuring what kind of man jokes when he's tired. If I stayed late, she stayed later. If I offered to grab her coffee, she'd thank me without telling me how she took it, like accepting specifics from me might mean something. And then there were the silences, in the hallway outside our apartments, in the office kitchen when we reached for the same mug, in the elevator at 7:12 every morning when she'd stand beside me with one hand around her travel cup, staring ahead while tension pressed against the walls harder than the lift itself. I told myself I imagined it, until the night I heard my name. It was late. Most of the office was empty. I'd gone back for my laptop charger and passed the small conference room near the stairwell. The door wasn't fully shut. Sloane was inside with Ethan Bell, one of the senior partners. Ethan had the kind of face people trusted too quickly. Expensive watch, easy grin, the sort of guy who could make bad news sound flirtatious. "I'm just saying," Sloane said, voice low, "I don't think Noah should be the one to go." Something in me went still. Ethan replied too quietly for me to hear. Then Sloane said, "He's good at hiding when he's overwhelmed. That doesn't mean we should keep asking for more." I should have kept listening. I should have opened the door. I should have let context do its job. Instead, I stood there like an idiot with my charger in one hand and my pride in the other, hearing only the worst version of what she'd said. I left before either of them saw me. After that, everything about her got sharper. The way she looked at me in meetings felt less like interest and more like assessment. The way Ethan drifted around her desk made my jaw tighten for reasons I refused to examine. And the worst part was, I still noticed everything soft about her. The tiny crease between her brows when she read, the way she tucked loose hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the fact that she always pretended not to shiver in over-air-conditioned rooms. One night, about a month before the trip, the power in our building cut out for 15 minutes during a thunderstorm. I opened my apartment door to check the hall and found her standing there barefoot with her phone flashlight on, looking annoyed at the universe. "Please tell me this building has backup power," she said. "Only if the landlord suddenly develops a conscience." That got a real smile out of her. For some reason, that felt more dangerous than the dark. She leaned against her door frame while rain battered the windows at the end of the hall. The emergency lights painted everything in a weak amber glow. "You hate storms?" I asked. Her face changed so slightly I might have missed it if I hadn't already spent too much time noticing her. "No," she said. "I just don't like the sound of waiting." I frowned. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have tonight." Then lightning flashed, close enough to rattle the glass. She flinched. It was small, fast, almost hidden, but real. I held up my flashlight. "You can come sit inside until the power's back." Her eyes met mine, and for one long second the hallway got too quiet. "That would be a bad idea," she said. "Because I'm your neighbor?" "Because you're my neighbor," she said. Then after a beat, "And my coworker." Right, scandalous. She laughed under her breath, looked down, and for that one suspended second she seemed softer than I'd ever seen her. Then the lights came back, and whatever had almost happened between us disappeared under fluorescent bulbs in good sense. A week later I saw Ethan touch the small of her back as they walked into the office lobby together. It probably meant nothing. People do meaningless things all the time. But she looked up at him too fast, said something I couldn't hear, and he smiled like they shared a private world I wasn't invited into. I spent the rest of the day being irritated at everyone, including myself. That evening I ran into Sloane in the apartment building mailroom. She was carrying a grocery bag and trying to sort envelopes one-handed. "Let me guess," I said. "More mystery, more silence. Maybe a tragic stare into the middle distance?" She looked up. "Is that how you see me?" I reached for the mail she almost dropped. Our fingers brushed again. There it was, that stupid electric pause. "No," I said too honestly. "That's just the part you let people see." For the first time, she didn't look away, and that was my mistake. Because when someone like Sloane Avery looks at you for too long, you start saying things you didn't plan to say. "Ethan seems to get a different version," I added. Something shuddered in her expression. "You shouldn't assume things about people you don't know." "Funny," I said. "I was going to say the same to you." The silence after that felt like a slammed door. She took her mail, gave me one clipped nod, and went upstairs. I stood there with my own words echoing back at me like I was the last person to realize I'd crossed a line. We barely spoke for 2 days. Then the Halston pitch got moved up, and suddenly we were on the same business trip to Charleston with Ethan and 2 other team leads, flying out on a Thursday afternoon under a sky already bruising toward rain. By the time we landed, the weather had turned mean. Flights were being canceled. Roads were flooding near the coast. Everyone in the terminal was talking too loudly into their phones like volume could control weather. Ethan got rerouted with one of the team leads after a booking error. The other lead decided to stay with family outside the city. Sloane and I were left in the rental car, windshield wipers struggling against sheets of rain so heavy they made the highway look underwater. She sat in the passenger seat with both hands around her phone, watching the storm like it had a personal history with her. "You okay?" I asked. "Do I look okay?" No, you look very composed, which is usually worse. That earned me a sideways glance. Keep your eyes on the road, Mercer. There was that loaded joke again. Half distance, half warmth. The kind that made me want to lean in and pull back at the same time. By the time we got to the hotel, the lobby was packed with stranded travelers, damp suitcases, crying kids, and one front desk manager who looked ready to quit hospitality forever. He typed furiously, frowned at the screen, then looked up at us with the expression of a man about to ruin someone's night. "We've had multiple emergency bookings," he said. "I only have one room left." "That's fine," I said. "We have 2 reservations." He gave me a tired smile that said I was adorable for thinking reservations still mattered. "1 room, 1 bed. I can send up extra blankets, but that's all I have." I opened my mouth. Sloane beat me to it. "We'll take it." I turned to her. "We can find another hotel." "In this storm?" she asked quietly. "Noah." It was the first time she'd used my first name without sounding like she regretted it immediately. The room was on the 9th floor. 1 bed, no couch, 1 armchair by the window. Rain streaking the glass so hard the city beyond it looked like it was dissolving. Sloane set down her bag and gave the room one long look. "Well, I'll take the chair." "You'll break your neck in that chair." "I'll take the floor." "There's no extra bedding." "I've slept in worse places." She turned to face me then, arms folded, hotel lamp throwing gold across one side of her face and shadow across the other. "Why are you acting like I'm about to bite you?" That caught me off guard. "I'm trying to be respectful." She held my gaze a second too long. "You're trying not to feel anything." The room got very quiet after that. Thunder rolled somewhere far enough away to sound patient. I looked down first. "That's not the same thing," I said. "Isn't it?" Neither of us answered. Eventually, she took the bathroom for a shower first. When she came out wearing loose gray sweatpants and an oversized sweatshirt, with her damp hair pulled over one shoulder, I had to look away under the pretense of checking emails I couldn't focus on. When it was my turn, I splashed cold water on my face longer than necessary and stared at my reflection like he might offer better advice than I had. He didn't. By the time I came back out, she was already on the far edge of the bed, covers pulled up, lamp still on. I took my side carefully, leaving a ridiculous amount of space between us. We looked like 2 people trying to survive a hostage negotiation. "Good night," I said. "Good night." 10 minutes later, lightning struck somewhere close enough to snap the room white. Sloane inhaled sharply. "You okay?" "Fine." She wasn't fine. I could hear it in the way she answered too quickly, like panic hated being observed. Another crack of thunder shook the window. A few minutes passed. Then, without a word, she shifted an inch closer. Not enough to touch, just enough for me to notice. I kept my eyes on the ceiling and said nothing. An hour later, the storm got worse. Rain slammed against the glass. Wind moaned through the building. Somewhere down the hall, something heavy fell with a metallic crash that made her jerk awake. The lamp flickered once, twice, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. I heard her breathe in. Then her hand found my wrist. Not romantic, not deliberate, just human. I turned toward her in the dark. "Sloane." "Sorry," she whispered, but she didn't let go. "It's okay." Thunder rolled overhead like furniture being dragged across the sky. She slowly loosened her grip, but instead of moving away, she stayed there, close enough now that our shoulders were almost touching. "I hate storms," she said into the dark. It felt less like a confession and more like a surrender. I waited. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "There, that's your answer." "The one from the hallway?" "Yes." Lightning flashed through the curtains, outlining her face. She was looking at me now. "I was supposed to pick up my brother 3 years ago," she said. He called me twice. I ignored him because I was still at work, and I was angry that he'd changed plans at the last minute again. It was storming. Roads were bad. He got hit at an intersection 2 blocks from where I should have been. I went completely still. He lived, she said quickly, as if she'd learned to reassure people before they asked. But his leg was shattered. He needed surgeries, rehab. My parents never said it was my fault, but I didn't need them to. I said yes to one more meeting when I should have left. So now every storm sounds like something arriving too late. There are moments when the right thing to say doesn't exist. This was one of them. So I didn't reach for a perfect line. I just turned my hand over beneath the blanket until my fingers found hers. This time, when she held on, it was on purpose. "I'm sorry," I said. Her eyes glistened in the dim light from outside. I know. That answer broke me a little, because it wasn't fishing for comfort. It was just tired. We lay there in the storm, hand in hand, saying nothing for a while. And the silence between us changed shape. It stopped feeling guarded, started feeling shared. A little later, she spoke again. "Why did your engagement end?" I looked at her. "That's direct. You can lie if you want." "I know." Another flash of lightning, another stretch of rain. Then I told her the truth. Claire said loving me felt lonely. Sloane didn't interrupt. I swallowed. She said I knew how to take care of emergencies, deadlines, everyone else's problems. But when it came to me, what I needed, what I felt, I disappeared. I thought being easy to live with was the same thing as being open. It wasn't. The words sounded stranger out loud than they had in my head. "She left because you didn't let her in?" Sloane asked. "She left because I kept standing outside my own life and calling it maturity." That made her go still. I could feel her thinking. Then she gave the smallest, saddest smile. "That's annoyingly self-aware. I save it for weather-related emotional breakdowns." She laughed, a real laugh this time, soft, brief, exhausted. And because the storm had apparently decided we were not suffering enough, thunder shook the room again, and she instinctively moved closer, close enough that her forehead nearly brushed my shoulder. Neither of us moved away. There are touches that feel accidental, and then there are touches that stay long enough to become a decision. I turned my head. She looked up. The darkness made everything quieter, intenser. Her eyes searched mine like she was trying to figure out whether wanting something counted as a mistake if neither person said it first. Then her phone lit up on the nightstand. The screen flashed a name, Ethan. She pulled back immediately. I hated that I noticed how fast. She reached for the phone, stared at it, then silenced the call. I tried to sound neutral. Failed. "You should probably answer that." Her expression changed, closed. "It can wait." I nodded like that didn't matter, but it did. Because jealousy is embarrassing when you haven't earned the right to feel it. And mine sat there in the bed between us like a third person. A few minutes later, my own phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Claire, of course. Sloane saw the name in the glow before I turned the screen over. Something in her face shut down so quickly it made my stomach drop. "There it is," she said quietly. "What does that mean?" "Nothing." "Sloane." She rolled onto her other side, putting a careful inch of distance between us that felt colder than the air conditioning. "Good night, Noah." I barely slept after that. By morning, the storm had weakened, but the room felt worse. Everything between us had become too clear and not clear enough. She was already dressed when I woke up, standing by the window with coffee in one hand and that same polished expression back in place. "Roads should reopen by noon," she said. "Okay." That was it. No mention of the night. No mention of her hand in mine. No mention of the way she'd moved closer every hour, like her body had told the truth before either of us could manage it. At breakfast, Ethan showed up in the lobby, damp from travel and too comfortable in his own timing. He walked straight toward us. "Finally found you two," he said. Then, before I could stop myself from reacting, he hugged Sloane. Not a casual coworker hug. Familiar, easy. My chest tightened. She stepped back fast enough for me to notice, but not before the damage was done. Ethan looked at me. Mercer. I gave him the kind of nod men use when they are one bad sentence away from becoming a problem. Sloane noticed. Of course she noticed. Outside, while Ethan went to take a call, she turned to me near the covered entrance where rain still dripped from the awning in steady silver lines. "You're being weird." "I'm being weird?" "Yes." I laughed once. Interesting choice of word. Her eyes flashed. "If you have something to say, say it." "Fine. I heard him call you last night. He shows up first thing this morning like he belongs in your orbit. You tell me not to assume things, but what exactly am I supposed to think?" For 1 second, she just stared at me. Then she let out a breath that sounded almost disbelieving. "Ethan is my cousin." I blinked. "Your what?" "My cousin Noah." Somewhere behind us, luggage wheels rattled across tile. Rain hit pavement. My entire ego burst into flames. "I didn't know that." "No," she said. "You usually don't wait to know things." That landed exactly where it was aimed. Before I could answer, she added, "And since we're suddenly doing honesty, Claire?" "She wants the last of her things from storage, that's all." Now it was Sloane's turn to go still. I saw the shift in her face. Relief, then annoyance at the relief. We might have actually fixed it right there. Might have. Except Ethan came back holding a folder and said, "Sloane, I need your signature before legal sends the transfer through." Transfer. The word hit like cold water. She took the folder from him without looking at me. And just like that, everything tilted again. I didn't ask on the drive to the client site, didn't ask during the pitch, didn't ask when she stood beside me in a conference room full of glass and polished wood, and delivered our presentation with such calm precision that no one would have guessed she'd spent half the night holding my hand in the dark. I waited until evening, until we were back at the hotel, until the sky had gone from gray to deep blue and the storm had left the city rinsed clean. She was in the hallway outside her room when I finally said it. "You're leaving." She turned slowly. "What?" "The transfer papers." Understanding crossed her face, followed by something more fragile. "That's what this is about?" "What else should it be about?" She stared at me for a long second, and then she laughed, except it was the kind of laugh people make when they're too close to tears and hate it. "I signed those papers 2 weeks ago," she said. "Before this trip. Before last night." I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "Why?" She looked down the hall, not at me. "Because living across from you and working with you and pretending none of this was happening was getting harder than leaving." My pulse stumbled. She finally looked at me then, and the softness in her face nearly undid me. "I thought you still loved someone else," she said. "I thought I was being ridiculous. I thought maybe distance was the only adult decision left." I took one step toward her. "Why didn't you say anything?" Her smile this time was small and wrecked. "Because the last time I wanted someone this much, I trusted my timing and hurt people I loved. Because you looked at me like you were interested, and then you'd pull back so hard it made me feel stupid for noticing. Because I didn't know if you wanted me, or if I was just the nearest person in a storm." That one hurt because it was fair. I moved closer anyway. "Do you know why I kept pulling back?" She shook her head. "Because every time you looked at me, I stopped feeling in control, and I've spent years pretending control is the same thing as being good." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I heard part of that conversation with Ethan," I said, "at the office. I thought you were saying I couldn't handle the project." Her whole face changed. Noah. I was telling him not to overload you because you'd been taking your mom to chemo before work and still pretending you were fine. I stared at her. You knew about that? You take those calls in the stairwell, she said softly. I wasn't spying, I just noticed. There it was again. All those months of careful silence suddenly rearranging themselves into something else. Not distance. Attention. I laughed once, mostly at myself. So we've both been miserable because we're terrible at context. That's one version. What's the other? She took a breath. We were scared. The hallway seemed to narrow around us. No thunder now. No emergency. No darkness to hide in. Just her. Just me. Just the unbearable honesty of standing there awake to all of it. I reached for her slowly enough to give her time to stop me. She didn't. My fingers brushed the edge of her sleeve, then her hand. Even then, I think we both felt how much that tiny touch meant. I don't want you to go because this got hard, I said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What if staying is harder? Then stay anyway. The look she gave me after that is still one of the quietest, devastating things I've ever survived. She stepped closer, not much. Just enough for her forehead to rest briefly against my chest, like she was exhausted from carrying herself alone. I wrapped my arms around her carefully, like I was handling something breakable and brave at the same time. She exhaled against me, and for a few seconds, neither of us said anything. We just stood there in a hotel hallway that smelled like rain and carpet cleaner and second chances. When she finally pulled back, her eyes searched mine with that same rawness from the night before. I moved closer because I was scared, she said. I smiled. I know. She shook her head. Not just of the storm. That was the moment everything inside me went quiet. Not numb, not empty. Quiet in the way a room goes quiet when the right person has finally told the truth. I touched her face then, thumb brushing the edge of her cheekbone, and she leaned into it with a softness that felt less like permission and more like trust. The kiss, when it happened, was not dramatic. No music, no applause from the universe. Just a slow, careful meeting of two people who had spent too long misunderstanding the same feeling. It was brief, tender, enough to change the air around us. When we pulled apart, she gave this disbelieving little laugh and looked down like she needed a second to exist inside her own happiness. That's it? She murmured. I grinned. You want a speech too? Maybe. I've got one, I said. It's terrible though. She looked up. Let me hear it. So I told her the only true thing I had left. I think I started falling for you in the elevator. I just didn't know what to do with someone who made silence feel louder than conversation. That made her eyes shine. And because she was still Sloane, still herself even in the middle of tenderness, she said, That is terrible. Yeah? Yeah. She slid her hand into mine. But you can keep me anyway. When we got back home 2 days later, the city had cleared. The streets looked washed clean. The air smelled like pavement and sun. We stood in the elevator again, but this time nothing separated us. She asked where I'd sleep, light, teasing, but real. When the doors opened, she didn't rush. She invited me without needing a storm, and that was everything. Not the chaos, not the almosts, the choice, in daylight, without fear. I still remember that first night, the quiet inches between us, her hand finding mine, the courage hidden in small movements. Love doesn't arrive all at once. It builds in pauses, in glances, in moments that feel too honest to ignore. And sometimes it begins when someone simply decides not to turn away.